Shout out to Caressa for sending me this article. Now, I don't have to explain who you see in the picture. Of course, we don't know the person by name, but we know them by image. And I'm just going to refer to them as they for purposes, but you know what I mean when I say this. So as y'all already know, about a week, man, it actually was like 2 weeks ago. It's amazing. Time just flying by fast. I did a video. It was actually a Petty Pendergrass production. It was actually two of them, by the way. One was and one wasn't. Where I talked about how there was a funeral that they had, a massive funeral. I guess that's part of their religion, in which they carry the coffin and the body out into public and everything like that. And how people was upset because nobody said anything to them. And I said, well, y'all know why they didn't say anything. And about a couple days later, we saw a picture of one of them being wheeled into a hospital or some area, and they had a mask on because of the virus, and they most likely caught it. Well, fast forward to today, which is April 21st, 2020, looks like that particular community is getting hit even harder by this. I told y'all it was only going to be a matter of time, and I bet Hasidic families hit hard by the virus. One of the first people Shulim Leffer knew who died of the virus was his great uncle. Then his grandmother fell ill, as did two of his cousins. The man who lived next door to his childhood home died on a Tuesday, and by Friday the neighbor on the other side was dead as well. Each neighbor was given a small funeral, with a handful of mourners standing 6 feet apart on their front lawns in the Brooklyn neighborhood of Borough Park. There is not a single Hasidic family that has been untouched, said Mr. Leffer, who was 34. It is a plague on a biblical scale. The virus has hit the Hasidic community in the New York area with devastating force, killing influential religious leaders and tearing through large, tight-knit families at a rate that community leaders and some public health data suggest may exceed that of other ethnic or religious groups. I don't know. Maybe that could be debated. I'm not sure. The city does not track deaths by religion, but Hasidic news media report that roughly 700 members of the community in New York area have died from the virus. Borough Park is a leafy neighborhood of low-rise buildings and small businesses like the kosher bakeries and Judaica shops on Raoul Wallenberg Way that cater to the local Hasidic population. More than 6,000 people there have tested positive for the virus, with one of the neighborhood's zip codes being the city's fifth most heavily affected. Other neighborhoods with large Hasidic populations like South Williamsburg and Crown Heights have some of the city's highest levels of positive virus test results. Hasidic groups say they prepare for the pandemic, for example, making decisions on the closure of schools and events by taking their cues from the state and federal authorities, whose response to the crisis has been at times halting and inconsistent. But community leaders say Hasidic enclaves in New York were also left vulnerable to the virus by a range of social factors, including high levels of poverty, a reliance on religious leaders who were in some cases slow to act, and the insular nature of Hasidic society, which harbors a distrust of secular authorities that is born of a troubled history. That distrust has manifested itself in ways that have risked spreading the virus and have drawn the attention of law enforcement, which in recent weeks have been called to disperse crowds at events like weddings and funerals in Hasidic areas of Brooklyn, upstate New York, and New Jersey. Now, it was a video that I really wanted to do, but I said, you know what, I'm going to refrain from doing it. But if you are on Twitter, there was a video where they were gathering, I don't know for what, somewhere in New York, and they pulled out these hoses, and when I tell you, it almost looked like the civil rights era when the hoses was used on us. And when I tell you, them hoses are powerful. It was one guy who was running through the street doing whatever, and one of the people that was controlling the hose, they was like, oh, you think you just gonna run through this street and you're not gonna get hit with this water? Okay, bet. Put that hose on the full blast. That man went flying. And when I tell you, he flew across the pavement to the point where his robe or his attire flew upwards and almost off of his body. Like, that's powerful. If your robe can fly upwards and almost leave off of your body. And I think it was a little boy out there too got hit with the hose too. And he flew back too. Well, he almost flew back, but he flew into somebody else. But you can tell them hoses were very powerful. Some of you probably seen the video. That in turn has led to concerns over anti-Semitism in places like Rockland County, which has one of the highest per capita infection rates in the nation and was also the site of an anti-Semitic attack in December that killed one Hasidic individual and injured four others. How did I know they was going to throw anti-Semitism in this? How did I know they were going to insert that into this? They literally put themselves into the victim mode when they know daggone well how serious this virus was and decided to put themselves out there anyway. Now, they said they was keeping themselves 6 feet apart, but when I was looking at that funeral footage, they looked very close. That did not look like 6 feet. Like they was really, like they was packed close together. That's not 6 feet. That wasn't even 6 inches. Celebrations of the Jewish holiday of Purim, which fell on March 10th this year, were canceled by many Reform, Conservative, and Modern Orthodox synagogues. But many Hasidic groups observe the festival, drawing people to gatherings where they have been exposed to the virus. Not only the Haredi ultra-Orthodox Jews, but a lot... Dang, I just said it. But a lot of them responded to the idea of not going to the synagogue or gathering in a public place with a feeling of outrage because it brought to mind times when religious persecution shut down synagogues, says Susanna Herschel, a professor of Jewish studies at Dartmouth College. That sense of defiance has been evident in neighborhoods like Borough Park and South Williamsburg, where some businesses and religious bathhouses have displayed signs written in Yiddish, a language not widely spoken outside of the Hasidic community, informing patrons of hours and prices, or instructed them to use an entrance not visible from the street. The problem there was confusion from persecution that comes from a human being and a plague, a virus, Dr. Herschel said. But there was a sense that we are not going to be subjected to this kind of treatment. We are going to fulfill our lives as they, in a rich way, and we're going to go to the synagogue. It is a sort of defiance and affirmation of Jewish identity. Well, y'all go ahead and y'all do that. And that 700 will double to 1,400. At which point many of us would not care. Because, see, here's the thing. Like many others, and especially them 45 supporters, they think they're untouchable. They think that they are covered by whatever religion it is that they practice. I remember I was hearing some lady said, I'm going to go to church. And they was like, why are you going to church? Because I'm covered by the blood of Jesus. I was like, okay. Okay. If you say so. Dr. Herschel's cousin, Rabbi Yaakov Perlow, who led the Novominsker Hasidic dynasty as well as the Agadah Israel of America, an umbrella ultra-Orthodox organization, died earlier this month of the virus. He had urged Hasidic to abide by public health guidelines and was perhaps the most high-profile Jewish leader in the world to die of the virus. But others have died as well, most of whom have been deprived of the sort of large funeral that would typically honor a religious figure. Normally, there would be tens of thousands of people here, said Malka Phillips as she stood on the Eastern Parkway early this month to watch the socially distanced funeral procession of Rabbi Lebo Groner. We're losing an entire generation. But not every event has been sparsely attended. Funerals and weddings in parts of Brooklyn and suburban towns have drawn widespread news media coverage. A Hasidic funeral in Lakewood, New Jersey, turned unruly and argumentative once police arrived and dispersed a crowd of more than 60 people. Earlier this month, Bradley D. Billimer, the Ocean County prosecutor, said in a statement, his office charged 15 attendees with violating Governor Philip D. Murphy's executive order barring large gatherings. Hasidic community leaders bristle at any discussion of such violations. They say they feel singled out by the news media, and several Hasidic people interviewed for this article asked to remain anonymous. Hold on. How are they going to feel singled out by this when this is in effect for everybody, not just them? They feel that this is the way that they get people to, get that whole anti-Semitism thing on their side. They position themselves to make it seem like they're the only ones here and we should all just care about them. Just drop whatever we're doing, just care about them. They made it seem like they're the only ones being targeted by this thing, or saying that they're the only ones that can't gather in large spaces. Newsflash, I don't know if they've watched the TV or been on social media, but we're all affected by this, not just them. Let me continue. There have been several very disappointing incidents that are very unfortunate, but the vast majority of people in these communities are staying home under very tough circumstances. When people violate the isolation guidelines within these communities, they become the focus of frustration and anger from others within the community. He said the community was vulnerable to the virus not because of isolated incidents of rule breaking, but instead because of the very things that make it vibrant. Tight-knit families, a commitment to ritual, and multi-generational households where the very young and very old live side by side. Listen. The virus does not discriminate. I don't know if anyone has told them this. I don't know who was going to tell them this, but I'll tell them from a distance. The virus does not discriminate. It will take anybody out. As you can see by what I read, it has already taken 700 of them out. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it was more. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Twitter if you haven't done so already. Have your notifications turned on, and I'll talk to you in the next one.